That is carried.
I call upon Matt Wrack, TUC President, to address Congress.
Vice President, delegates, Congress, it is a great pleasure to give this speech as President. I did have some hesitation when it came to be given the opportunity to take this role. I have known occasionally to be critical. But the FBU has only held the presidency of the TUC once before. That was Terry Parry in 1980. So I am honoured indeed to take this opportunity for our union for only the second time in our history. I want to begin by looking back a little. You can see my comrades from the NUM in the hall this evening. And this year marks the 40th anniversary of the historic and heroic miners' strike. It was a battle for an industry, a battle for jobs, a battle for union rights, and a battle for communities. And the stance of the NUM has been vindicated every single year ever since. The miners' strike exposed the extent to which those in power will go in order to attack our movement and our class. Miners were battered and bloodied by the police, spied on, framed, imprisoned by the courts and victimised by the employer. We want justice for Orgreave, and we want justice for every sacked, convicted and victimised miner. They were heroes, not criminals, and they were fighting for all of us. Now, delegates, this week we saw the final report of the Grenfell Tower inquiry. The Grenfell Tower fire was a horrifying disaster. It exposed much that is wrong in this society, where the safety of the many is sacrificed for the profits of the few. I visited that fire as operations were still underway. Subsequently, I spoke to many firefighters who were involved, and in all my years as a firefighter and then as an FBU official, I have never heard such stories. The firefighters who responded performed wonders, and I pay tribute to them and to all others involved in our NHS, in local government and elsewhere. And I also say this, almost to a man and a woman, the people entering that inferno that night, risking their own lives in desperate attempts to save others, were trade unionists, members of the Fire Brigade Union, and I remain incredibly proud of everything they did that night. They faced a fire which had never been planned for and for which they had not been trained. They were forced to improvise and adapt. I heard stories of horror and of heroism that will live with me for the rest of my life. This is not to excuse others in the fire and rescue service or elsewhere. There are many, many failings to be addressed. But my union, the FBU, warned as long ago as 1999 that the new systems of external cladding created new risks, including the breakdown of compartmentation, which is supposed to be a key feature of building safety and is the basis for the normal fire service response to fires in such buildings. Yes, there have indeed been failings. They originate many decades ago. In 1979, Margaret Thatcher's first Queen's speech included the following: "Our policies will be founded on a firm belief in the need to maximise and promote profits and profitability. We shall therefore make a start in extending the role of free enterprise by reducing the size of the state sector. It needs reducing, and by making economies in public spending." This has been central to government policy for decades. In building safety, it has led to complacency, a criminal complacency at the heart of government. The obsession with reducing so-called red tape in the interests of business and commercial interests resulted in the part privatisation of local authority building control, the privatisation of the Buildings Research Establishment, BRE, the 2004 Fire and Rescue Services Act, which fragmented our own service, the weakening of building regulations, all of these are part of the story which led to Grenfell. And in 2012, just 5 years before the fire, David Cameron had this to say: "I am determined to do everything possible to take the brakes off business, cutting taxes, slashing red tape. And there is something else we are doing, waging war against the excessive health and safety culture that has become an albatross around the neck of British businesses. So this coalition has a clear New Year's resolution to kill off the health and safety culture for good." In the light of the loss of life in 2017, those words sound grotesque, because they are grotesque, reflecting a grotesque ideology that lies behind this horror story. That approach has created a building safety crisis affecting millions. The terrifying fire in Dagenham just 2 weeks ago once again exposed the failure of authorities to tackle this scandal. And I'm sure Congress stands with those firefighters who tackled the Dagenham fire and those still living with the horror of Grenfell. We also stand in solidarity with the tenants and residents trapped in such an appalling situation. Yes, the task is large, but don't let politicians, including the new Labour government, claim there is no money for this or to invest in rebuilding public safety and rebuilding public services. At the very least, tax the profits of the building companies, the firms who sold deadly cladding, the developers, the landlords who have made fortunes out of this disgusting and dangerous chaos. We continue to demand justice for Grenfell, decent and safe homes for everybody. We don't just call for justice here, however. We are internationalists. We stand against oppression anywhere, and we stand with workers everywhere, in Iran and in Russia, in Bangladesh and in Brazil. We meet almost a year on from the attacks of 7th of October and the launch of the Israeli war on Gaza, now expanded increasingly into the West Bank. And we send our solidarity to the Palestinian people in the face of this horrifying onslaught. I pay tribute to the hundreds of thousands across the world, especially workers and youth, who have built an international movement against the war and the war crimes being committed each day. And I urge the new government, it should not be difficult to take the right side and make the right decisions in this case. Now, Congress, we meet just 2 months on from the general election, a major turning point in British politics. We've seen the end of a government which was increasingly ruthless, undemocratic and corrupt. And I'm sure many of you celebrated seeing the back of a government which demonstrated such hostility to trade unions and the trade union movement and to the rights of workers. Firefighters enjoyed seeing the back of Penny Mordaunt, who forced through attacks on our pensions, and I'm sure all of you enjoyed waving goodbye to Jacob Rees-Mogg. We confront two risks as we begin to deal with the new Labour government. Firstly, there's the risk that we all think the job is done. A Labour government is elected and we can sit back while things improve. Nothing could be further from the truth. Political campaigning must continue. There are powerful forces in play which will seek to resist measures to strengthen our unions or to shift economic power in favour of the majority. And the other risk is missing the opportunities which have opened up. We already hear some people saying there is little difference between politicians. That is a mistake as serious as complacency. The Labour-affiliated unions have campaigned hard within Labour structures for the New Deal for working people. The TUC and all affiliated organisations in this room have played a key part in demanding and making the case for change, which is now government policy. This includes the pledge to repeal the 2016 Trade Union Act and the appalling minimum services level legislation. Such steps will be the first major repeal of a significant piece of anti-union legislation since the onslaught on our movement began after the 1979 election of the Thatcher government. But that repeal must be just the start. It's our task in this movement, in this hall and in our unions to ensure that those pledges are delivered in full and without delay, that the voices of corporations, big business and the billionaires are swept aside in any debate. It's then our task to take the opportunity to build and renew our movement, to build the power of workers in the workplace. That means in new areas of economic development, the Amazons, the Ubers, the gig economy, the tech workers and others in emerging industries. We also have to ensure, delegates, that our unions are effective, that we win improvements in wages, that we win better conditions, and that we win improved safety at work. We have a huge opportunity and huge challenges. Let's make sure we take them up. Let's use that opportunity to build in new areas. And I say in a friendly way to the new Labour government, you must offer hope. People cannot take more of the same. We saw the effects of despair and the lack of hope in the riots over the summer. They were fueled by disgusting and divisive far-right narratives. They were also fueled by so-called mainstream politicians happy to scapegoat migrants and refugees. A Labour government must invest in new, secure, unionised jobs, in decent homes and in good quality services. Our message from the trade union movement is that we stand together, a workers' movement finding strength in all our differences. Our enemies don't come across the channel in flimsy boats. They travel the world in private jets and they play games. They play financial games with our futures and with the future of our planet. If we are divided, we will always lose. But if we stand together, we have the power to change the world. My union's rulebook has a preamble committing us to such change. It says this in its conclusion. To this end, the Fire Brigades Union is part of the working class movement and linking itself with the international trade union and labour movement has as its ultimate aim the bringing about of the socialist system of society. Those were the ideals which led previous generations to create and build my union. They're good ideals for today, and I'm proud to continue to hold them. Have a great Congress. Thank you.